Okay, so it's 12 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Thank you to everyone who's joining us today. It's great to have you with us. This is the fourth and final Paramics workshop session this year. And if you haven't seen the previous three or haven't been able to join us for any reason, they're all available on our support center and our YouTube channel. They've all been uploaded in the last week or so, so you can go back and check those out. We're delighted that you can be with us today, and today's session is called Software News, and we're really going to be looking back at the last year at what we've been doing with Paramics Discovery, the product and the services that we offer, and then also looking forward to what we're planning next. And it's great to have Dave Bennett joining us today. Dave is the software development manager for Paramics, and he's been working on Paramics for the best part of 20 years. So he knows it inside and out, and so it's great to have him joining us today, and hopefully he'll be able to answer some questions that you might have. So just a couple of things about the session today. There are different features on Livestorm here that we can use to interact. So there's a chat function, so please feel free to use that and chat throughout the session. There's also a questions column, so please feel to post questions. You can post them in the chat as well, which tends to be what has happened so far. And if you've got any questions, please do let us know throughout the session. We'll either answer them as we go, or we'll definitely pick them up at the very least at the end. We're also very happy to welcome anyone else into the conversation. If you want to share your video or ask a question in that way, then let us know and we can add you in. We've also got a polls feature, so we might ask you some questions as we go, and just do a few polls just to see what you think about certain things. So that's really it in terms of how the session is going to work. It'll last for an hour today, and hopefully we'll get plenty of time for questions as we go through. So I'm going to kick off. What I'll do, I'll maybe share my screen, and hopefully you can all see that. And I'll, Dave, if you can keep an eye on the chat, because I'll not be able to see that as I'm
will do
these slides. That would be super. So feel free to interrupt me if you need to. Okay, so as I say, today's session is about software news of Paramics in the last year or so. So it's really, I guess, a look back at what we've been doing initially. This last year has been different from any other really for all of us, and it's pretty obvious what the reason for that is. And so a big focus this time last year for us was to ensure that we could continue to develop and support you, develop Paramics and support you as you use Paramics throughout the year. And so one of the key aspects of that was enabling everyone to be able to work from home. And so it was great that we were able to really utilize the functionality that we've got within Paramics Discovery to work across networks, which meant that we can share licenses from different locations. We also offered and are still offering extra free S-Paramics dongles, so that no one lost out essentially by working from home. That was our kind of key focus. And of course, it was really important to keep Paramics developing and keep being able to offer support. And I was really, we're very grateful and pleased that we didn't have to furlough any of the Paramics team, that we were all able to continue working, albeit juggling, childcare and different aspects of life as we went through. So that's been a big focus of the last year, and it continues to be, but hopefully we will get through it in the not too distant future. So this time last year, we ran a series of online workshops. We did them a little bit differently than we have this year. We posted them we live streamed them on YouTube essentially, and we actually did a series of shorter sessions that were just about 30 minutes, and we did 9 of those in total through June and September. And I just wanted to reference those in case you haven't seen them, because there was some good content in those sessions and some quite advanced content as well, as you'll see from this list of the sessions. So as well as covering version 23 and 24 features, we also did a session on vehicle behavior and lane choice, highway modeling. We looked at a case study of development planning on the Isle of Man, and then we did a session on model calibration. So some more kind of advanced and really in-depth aspects of Paramics Discovery we covered in those workshops. If you haven't seen them, I'd encourage you to look them up on our support center or YouTube channel. And then into September last year, we released Paramics Discovery 24. As we do with all launches of Paramics Discovery now, we did that with a series of video tutorials. And you can see with the screenshot from YouTube that the key features in version 24 were the ability to see how individual vehicles were choosing their routes, their lane range and hazard awareness, and their gap acceptance. We introduced an incidents feature, which allows you now to do model vehicle breakdowns and accidents. We introduced a car parking feature for off-street and on-street parking, and we added public transport dwell times and movie capture. And then the visual enhancements as well was another kind of key improvement in version 24. So we did a lot in version 24, a lot of new features. They're all covered in these video tutorials, which again, you can go and check those out if you haven't already. And we launched version 24 on the 30th of September last year. Then coming through to January this year, we did a Paramics survey, and I want to say a big thank you to those of you who completed the survey and took the time to do that. We really appreciated it, and we got some really interesting and useful feedback. I want to share some of that with you today. So this was a question about the use of products and services. Which products and services are you using? So obviously our 2 products, Paramics Discovery and S-Paramics, are right up there at the top. It was great to see that Paramics Discovery was being used by almost everyone who completed the survey, which was great, and still a lot of S-Paramics use up there. So that was interesting feedback for us to get. There's still quite a few S-Paramics models out there. And then we got feedback on how other services were used. That's going to help us to tailor our resources and services going forward. The type of projects which you use Paramics for was another question that we asked, and we can see that there's 2 clear front runners there with development planning and scheme assessment. So again, that's really useful feedback for us as we think about how we invest in the product from here. But there's also like a whole range of other types of projects which are being used, as you can see from that list. We asked about the version of Paramics being used. And so almost all of those versions are Paramics Discovery, except for the 2014.1. So it was good to see that version 23 came up highest on the list. We'd released that about a year before the survey, and then version 24, which we released just a few months before the survey, was already climbing up the list. So there's a good sense from this that as versions are released, that they're being adopted and used, which is really great to see as we go. So that was another interesting feedback. And this one is one that's really actually changed how we've approached this year, because this was a question about how often do you want us to release a version of Paramics Discovery? And we'd been releasing roughly 2 a year for the last several years. And this feedback was really telling us actually once a year is probably enough. That was almost 2/3 of people saying that. So that was very useful feedback to get, and that's exactly what we're doing this year. We're just going to be releasing the 1 version, which will have more in it than other versions because of the length of time we'll have to develop it. A few positive things that came back from the survey: that Paramics Discovery's ease of use, network coding and editing was good, the speed of simulation was good, and various services that we're offering. and then some suggestions for improvement. These aren't the detailed things, just more the high level general feedback that we got. So reporting of errors was one that you'd like to see some improvement in. More reference guidance and documentation, walking and cycling, and air quality. So those are big themes that were coming back for suggestions for improvement. And so we'll touch later on in this session about some of the things that we're doing about that. So that was the Paramics survey, and again, just say thanks again for those of you who completed that, and also I guess to say, like, we always welcome feedback. It's always useful to get, and one of the things we're encouraging our team in Sister to do, a team of modelers, is as they give feedback to actually make little videos of using Paramics and what they'd like to see or what they're not so keen on. So if you want to give us that type of feedback, it's so easy these days to make little demo videos, then it's always welcome, and we're always interested in hearing it. Okay, then in February, we launched the link between PC Mover and Paramics Discovery. So Paramics Discovery is now compatible with PC Mover 3. We've been working with TRL on that over the last couple of years. This works on the Paramics Discovery ITS license, and you can find out more about PC Mover 3 if you visit TRL's website. There's a link on this slide to that. And please contact us if you want to find out more about how to use Paramics Discovery with PC Mover. We've got a guidance document that will talk you through getting set up with that. Okay, just a few of the Paramics projects that we've added to our website in the last year, just to give you a flavor of some of the things that are going on. This first one, it was a Sistra project. It was a Paramics model predicting journey time delays for roadworks on the Erskine Bridge in Scotland. So this is something we've done quite a lot of in Scotland, actually, is using Paramics models for roadworks to give estimations of likely delays and some mitigation around that. We also had a Paramics Discovery model of Perth, which was used to model COVID measures. So that was obviously a very topical issue in the last year, and something we were able to use the features within Paramics Discovery to actually model some COVID measures that Perth were looking at putting in place. And we touched on this in a couple of sessions ago. The low emission zone in Aberdeen, and Callum Guild covered this in session 2 of this workshop series, so you can go and look at that one in detail. There's also an article on it on our website. And then a couple of projects from others. This one was from Vectos. Again, it was using Paramics to model social distancing proposals, and they also developed a Paramics Discovery model to support some regeneration plans in Nuneaton. And they worked with another company, Civil Visuals, who we've worked with a little bit as well, who are able to extract the outputs from the detailed vehicle behavior within a Paramics model and present it in a really nice 3D augmented reality. So that was just something I wanted to kind of flag up as a new innovation which has happened in the last year. Now, just wanted to take this opportunity really to encourage you, if you want to let us know the projects you've been working on, whatever they might be. There's no project too big or too small. We'd be really happy and interested to post it on our website and give it a little bit of marketing as well. So let us know if you're interested in sharing some of your projects with us in the future. But that's just a few things that have been going on in the last year, and you can find those all on our website as well. Okay, we're going to move on now to where we're going with Paramics Discovery, and the heart of this is really going to be me handing over to Dave in a moment to so that he can talk through some of the things we've already done in version 25 and actually demo them live for you today. But before we do that, I just want to kind of reiterate a slide which we've shared over several years now about where we're going with Paramics Discovery. And as you know, obviously technology is changing and the various products are emerging in the market that do different things. And what we're really saying with this is that we want to be as good as we can at what we do, essentially. So we're looking to make vehicle microsimulation on road networks as good as we can possibly make it. And that means improvements to vehicle behavior and various aspects of functionality within the product. And we'll come on to some of the things we're doing with that. We've also got a big focus with Paramics Discovery on making it easy, quick, and reliable. And so again, lots of our energy and effort is going into that. So that's kind of our general focus as a product. Okay, and Paramics Discovery 25 is the next version of the product which is coming. We're planning it for November this year, and I'm going to hand over to Dave now, who's going to do a live demo of several of the features which are already in this version, and then we'll talk about some of the additional ones which we're going to add. So Dave, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. Joe just has a question. It might be appropriate time to answer. So for the COVID measures model, did we have to calibrate the base model again if we use data collected during COVID?
No, it was more a case of testing ideas which the council were thinking about implementing. So an example of that would have been widening pavement areas, which would have eaten into the road space. So there wasn't a recalibration process. It was more just testing various assumptions using the base model that was there.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I'll just let me share my screen. You see that okay?
Yeah,
great.
Fine.
Okay, just make sure I've got nothing compromising on the desktop or anything. Always get anxious about that kind of thing. So I'll just say thanks again to everyone for coming. I'm going to just guide you now through some of the developments we've been doing with this new longer release cycle. Give you an overview of those, and if anybody has questions, there's a few that I'm not going to show today that are sort of minor things that we'll also go over later on, but give you an idea of these ones at the moment. So I'm just going to start us off today with some new features. I just want to say right at the top that this is what we would call an alpha build, so it hasn't been through rigorous quality assurance yet. It hasn't been tested in the way we would do before release. So if it crashes during this simulation, you have to be understanding as to why that is. It would be a surprise. Okay, so the first thing to mention is that we now have the new recent models tools. So when you open up Paramics Discovery, you'll be able to see a list of all the models you've had open recently, and a similar thing in here. Sort of feature you might find in Excel or other Windows products to be able to see what models have been open recently. So I'm just going to start with this one here, which is taken from one of our training sessions. So first thing to say is that we've been putting some effort into improving the help menu. So during the survey, that we did recently, a lot of people came back and asked us to provide a bit more help material for people to reference. So we've made a slight adjustment to the product in that we can now search in the knowledge base and search in YouTube, the YouTube tutorial videos we have directly from the product. So if I click here into search YouTube, it'll bring up a box and I can type in way, which will open up, we'll see that, but it will open up our Paramics YouTube channel with the search already filled out with the giveaway option. And then you can see giveaway at roundabouts, extend giveaway to oncoming traffic appears as an option. And we've did the same with the knowledge base articles on the support site. And Joe's just asked, no video or tutorial on partition in the Analyze tab. Are you considering that in the future? I'll have to go back to Malk to specifically answer that particular topic. Now that you've asked for it, that probably means we'll eventually get one. But there are new knowledge base articles and videos on the way, and that might be one of them.
I'm happy to keep an eye on the chat, Dave, if you
okay, sure.
Don't feel you need to do both.
Okay, great. The other thing we've done is change the license details. So some people have asked for a bit more information, and you can see in here your license number and your expiration date, the amount of area you have available, what you've used, and whether you've got ITS will now be available from the license menu to make that information more accessible for you. Now I'm going to dive into one of the newer features, which is we've introduced recently, which was the parking near side and off, parking feature that was added, and we've now introduced the ability to do parking on the near side and off side of a one-way link. So I have a one-way link here, and I can now choose to have parking on the near side or the off side of this link. I'll show you in the settings here. You can choose whether to have any parking on the near side, whether it's parallel or perpendicular, and similarly on the off side. So you can choose between the two. And if I just run this simulation, we'll see some vehicles come up and start to park. So it's up to you whether you want parking on either side or both sides, and which direction of that parking you actually want. It only works on one-way links. So on two-way links, you can have parking on both sides, but only obviously on both sides of the link. You can't have parking in the middle. And as I say, it can be on or off on either side. It doesn't have to just be on one side. It can be on both sides if that's what you choose. And there's lots of different ways to control where your vehicles go within that area based on the portals and based on link restrictions and things like that. So I think we'll be exploring that for a while to come. Okay, another thing that we've been asked about recently is more and more clients have been using aerial photography to import into their model to show as a backdrop to their models. And for Paramics, this has created some problems because sometimes these files are extremely large, and that creates problems with the PC given the memory usage that is required to achieve that. So we've invested some time in this version into trying to improve that situation for Paramics Discovery. So I'll give you an example now. Here we have a set of image tiles in a CSV format, which tells Paramics where to position those files. And I'll just open it up to give you an example. So it's just a CSV file with whether it's visible, the name of the file, the XYZ position, the width and the height. So I can import those files, and it will go through and load in all those tiles for me. Now, because the tiles are very large, and that creates a lot of memory overhead, it has to do them one at a time, but it will fill up the network at the beginning, and then once it's got them all, you shouldn't then notice it do it again. But much as Google Maps would do, when you're zoomed out quite far like this, you don't really need to see all of the detail for all of the tiles. And what Google Maps and similar products would do is only show you a certain resolution that you would actually be able to see. So if I zoom in on these tiles, you should see, or it may just not be noticeable, but as you get closer, it will actually improve the resolution based on whatever size of resolution the tile actually has. So the idea being that when you're very zoomed in, you will get a very high quality tile. And when you're zoomed out, you'll get a very low quality tile, but it will also save on the memory usage. So not only does it mean that you'll get better resolution when you're closer in, it also means you won't blow off the memory when you have huge numbers of tiles. It'll do a much better job of managing that memory for you. Okay. So I'll move on now to another new feature. So it's perhaps worth mentioning at this stage that part of what we've been doing for this version, which will lead into what we're doing in the next version, is looking at the code surrounding lane change and acceleration and hazards, just to try and get all of that all of that behavior, make it cleaner, make it more able for us to edit it and change it, so that when we do have to do that kind of work, we're in the better position to be able to do so. Excuse me. As part of that, though, we've also introduced the ability to have more awareness of what vehicles are up to. So we have added this new feature called vehicle environment awareness indicators. So I turn this on, and if I pick a vehicle you'll be able now to see more information about what that vehicle is actually up to. That's a bad example, but I'll come up with a better one. So for example, this vehicle here, I've tagged that vehicle and you can see it draws. It's found a collision at the junction. It knows that this vehicle it's going to collide with if it tries to move out now. And this is where it expects the collision to be. But as time goes, as you move to the next time step, the vehicle realizes that he can now go and he's just following. So it's doing gap acceptance on him, and then it changes to following. So that vehicle is now happy to move out and follow that vehicle. And you'll get similar things. If I go here, you'll see he says that's the vehicle he's following. So the vehicle's indicating, it's giving more indication of what its environment looks like, what it's aware of, which will be a useful debug tool when you're trying to look at your junctions to figure out and get your gap acceptance calibrated properly. Let's see if I can see another example. It'll also tell you lane changes, but those are harder to catch. Again, vehicle following. See if I can find another gap acceptance. No, following. It's a bit of bad choice of roundabout. This one maybe. No. Too much space. Oh, this one probably. There we go. There you go. So again, he's spotted that vehicle. You can see that he's aware of him, that he knows that he's going to collide with him. And now he's spotted that he's going to collide with that vehicle. And then probably, yeah, he's going to collide with that vehicle. And then he's okay to go. He finds a gap. There he goes. So you'll be able to use that throughout the junctions to help calibrate the behavior and make sure that vehicles are aware of the vehicles you expect them to be aware of. On a similar note, we've introduced a new thing we're calling the vehicle event indicators. Now, those veterans of Paramics might remember this feature from in the early 2000s, but we had a similar feature then that would allow you to tag vehicles when they performed a certain action or were wanting to perform a certain action. So in this example, I'm going to show the made lane change. And I'll move that forward. And now we'll be able to see, watch this area here, and we should see an orange circle start to appear above, there we go, above vehicles as the lane change. Around here. I might just open up another model as well that's got a good example of this. I'm going to use my open recent feature again. This one. Now if I spin forwards, there's a lot more congestion in this model, so I think it shows up. You can see the vehicle awareness indicators there, the vehicle events. So I'll just turn on made lane change. And then in this example, we've got a rather extreme 4-lane to 2-lane drop. So what I'm highlighting here is the vehicles that are aware that are wanting to lane change. So you can see that they're all trying to lane change there. And I can also highlight those that realize they're outside their lane range. So if I turn on hazards, I'll be able to see my hazard lane range distances here. So I would expect most vehicles to become aware around here of the fact that they're not in the right lane. And you can see here with my pink hexagons, all these vehicles are now aware of the fact that they're in the wrong lane, and they're going to start trying to want to lane change. And on my lane change indicator. And here, this vehicle, he's aware he's in the wrong lane, and he's just performed a lane change, and the indicator disappears. This is a very extreme example, but I think it shows the feature well. Become aware of the problem and make the lane changes to deal with it. Okay, so we expect that one in 25 as well. We've also spent some time based on feedback on the stored views feature, which we've had for a number of years, but hasn't really seen much attention. It's now become much more of a bookmarking style system, so I can add bookmarks for this location and this location over here. And then I can switch between them by clicking on the appropriate button to move me between them. I can also assign shortcuts to those particular locations and use the keyboard to jump between those locations as well, if that's what I want to do. And you can add and delete these as necessary for your model. And it takes what was an existing feature, but redesigns it to be a lot more modern, a lot more familiar to most Windows users these days. Okay, so some smaller features now. We've, based on feedback again, we've introduced the ability to, you no longer have to click once. What used to be the case is you would click once and then you would have to grab the node to move it around. We found that that was slowing a lot of people down. So now if you need to do so, you can just click once and drag the node, which before undo might have been more problematic, but now that you can undo things, it doesn't create too many issues if something goes wrong, which will hopefully speed up the moving of positioning of nodes and stop lines and curbs. We've also spent some time on improving the pavements. I think Brian Hutchison, one of our developers, is probably listening at the moment, and he's very excited whenever I mention his features, apparently. So he'll be excited to hear that, to hear me mention that we've spent some time getting the pavements, making improvements to those. So this is a feature that was there in version 24, but we've spent some time improving. There are certain edge cases where the pavements would struggle, but we've spent some time on that, improving it, so hopefully those will show up better in more situations now. We've also expanded our search. So we've always had the ability to search based on nodes and links if there was something you needed to find. Oh, that was, I told you, that was a crash. It's bound to happen eventually. Open that back up. So as well as being able to search now on nodes and links, we'll also provide the ability to search on PT stops and detectors and I think ped crossings as well. Hopefully won't crash it this time. There we go. So you can search on nodes, but if you need to search on stops, A, B, C, D there in the model, you can click on one of your stops and it will jump to it. What we've also changed there is that previously, especially if you had a very large model, when you searched for something, it would highlight it, but it would be in the middle of the screen, for example, in this area here, and you wouldn't really be able to pick it out because it's surrounded by so many other things. So we've changed this now, so when you search for something and click it, it will actually zoom you into the area that you were looking for, which is a lot more useful if you're actually searching for something. You probably want to be able to see it at the end. Okay, we've also been expanding our list of network review options. So at the moment, you can already highlight specific things within the model where there are speed restrictions. If there is visibility set, you can see all the areas in the model where that visibility has been applied. We've expanded this now to include the link to cost factors and the toll costs if you have any within the model. So these are my one link cost factor and my one toll cost factor in this model. So when you're overview of the model, you'll be able to easily see where the model has link cost factors applied or toll cost factors. We're also bringing this in for timed restrictions and pedestrian crossings, I think, is in there as well. Yeah. So more of the things that have time specific values, you'll be able to see that information at the overview with the network review, which will hopefully help in auditing and model analysis. We've made some improvements. Again, I keep saying it, but we've had a lot of great feedback in this last year. We really do welcome it. It's very, very helpful when we get it. And we've had some people ask us about roundabout editing lanes and making improvements there. So we've made a minor change here, which is you can now select your arm, press the button for the specific arm that you're trying to model. And then once you've turned it on, you can then turn on and off the lanes that are appropriate for that turn, for that exit. So rather than, it's a lot more intuitive to use now than it was previously. So again, thank you for that feedback. We're hopeful that that will be of a lot of help when modeling those. Other thing, again, based on some great feedback we had, is that our route viewer has always been a very useful tool. So let me bring this over here. If I click here and I click on my zone, I'll be able to see the paths that are usable to that location. Let's try something a bit more exciting like that. And if I go for 10% perturbation, there we go, get a variety of routes. Now, if I run the model for long enough, in the visualizer, I should get some delay building up as well. And we've introduced the ability now to sort on this. So if you need to sort based on either the cost of the route or the delay of the route, you can do it that way. So you can see which are the most delayed routes, which are the least delayed routes, and most expensive or least expensive routes, pardon me, through the model. We've also introduced now the ability to do one bit of feedback we had that this vehicle, the cycle offset, it wasn't very intuitive which way the edit would occur. So if I add 30 seconds of offset, does that mean the signals start 30 seconds early, or does it mean they start 30 seconds late? So now when you edit that value, it will actually change the diagram view for you so that you can see it's 30 seconds late that the cycle is starting with a 30-second offset. And if it's minus 30, you'll see it's starting 30 seconds earlier than it would have. So hopefully that will help when trying to coordinate multiple signals to see how the cycle offsets are actually being applied through that. We've also taken some time to improve the vehicle marking feature, which I'm not going to be able to find. There, sorry. So it was quite complicated, it was quite powerful, but we found that it was actually quite difficult to use. And so we've spent some time simplifying that feature a little bit. So you now have the same options, they're just easier to enable. So we can now marking styles on vehicle type, speed, whether the vehicle's queued or not, whether it's familiar, and its demand set. And we can switch to that a lot easier without having to set up complicated rules in order to see it. So I can see here at the junction, this vehicle's turned red because his vehicle speed is very low, but as he gets faster, he will change color. And as these vehicles slow down on approach to the junction, they'll slow down. So it gives you a good overview of what the speeds are like in a certain area of your model. Slow that down. But if you need to, you can still add specific colorings for specific routes. So if you need to see the vehicles that are going from link A to link B or from zone A to zone B, you can still add in that marking feature there. More feedback that we've had with the hazard overrides, that it sometimes could be quite time consuming to add in all your hazard overrides and type into the fields, especially if you have a lot of them. So we now have the ability to import and export hazard overrides in here. So you can choose now to import or export your hazard overrides as a CSV file. So if you find it a lot easier to code those in as a CSV file, you can now create the CSV file and use that to import and export your hazard overrides if that's preferable. Another of Brian's features that you'll be happy to see, I'll just go into the simulate here and simulate this. This was again another quite common thing in the survey feedback, was that sometimes in certain models under certain conditions you will get a model which gridlocks for whatever reason, and that run becomes quite useless for one reason or another. So what we've introduced is the ability to see at the end of the simulation the number of vehicles that were present in the simulation at the end and the number that were unreleased. So if you had a specific number of, if you've got not a vehicle count which is far in excess of what you were expecting, that may indicate that that model's gridlocked for one reason or another. You'll be able to now see instantly in here whether or not that's the case. And similarly, if we go into the export statistics tool, you'll be able to see here the number of vehicles that were in the run at the end and the number that were unreleased. So if you need to turn off specific runs because they're not useful to you, you can turn those off and ignore those when generating your statistics. As well as that, we also introduced a new summarize feature into the simulation tab. So when you run a simulation, you can also ask it to output the summary at the end. I'll show you that appears in your log directory. Now what you're actually getting there is the export statistics, export all feature. So it's as if you had Paramics is automatically pressing the export all button for you at the end of your run. So a lot of users were telling us they were going through collecting the runs, and they had to go to analyze, open that tool, find, and then hit the export all button to get their data. So if that's all you're going to use it for, you can now turn on this summarize flag in here, and when you run it, you'll get that summary out at the end automatically. Also in the Analyze tab, we now have the ability to import data plots from other models. So if you've got a model with a number of data plots set up that are useful to you for your reports, you can now import data plots. Just simply select the analysis file from your other model, double click it, and it'll import any data plots that were already in that model, and you can set it up, connect it to the appropriate data, and it saves you a lot of time in having to set up the various bits and pieces. Okay, I think that's brought us to the end of the demonstration part. I hope I've covered that in enough detail for everyone. If there are specific things, we might be able to come back and take another look later on. I think I'll ask Malk, because I think we're going to talk about a few other things, but I believe there's some slides to show at the same time. Are you there, Malk?
I am indeed.
Hello.
So I'll just, I'll share my screen, and then hopefully you can see that. Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Also, just before you go through these slides, Dave, I've just added a poll there on Livestorm just to see of all those features you've demoed. Well, I picked the main ones, not every single one, but just to kind of see which ones people will find most valuable. So if you want to fill in that poll, that'd be great. Okay, over to you.
Okay, so I touched on there that we had spent some time with the, I'm getting a bit of feedback, Mark. Can I mute you? Can I do that?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. Yes, I was saying that we'd spent some time on the acceleration behaviors, the passing behaviors, and the hazard code. Sorry, Mark, I don't think you read. I can still hear myself. It's very confusing.
Hold on.
Oh, of course, it's because you're in the thing. Sorry, that's what it is. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. That's much better. That was very confusing. Hear myself speaking about a second layer. So I improved the improvements to acceleration, passing, and hazard code partly as preparation for improving cyclist behaviors. So part of the reason we've introduced these new features with the vehicle awareness indicators and the vehicle event indicators is that we were looking at all that behavioral code, making sure it's as robust as possible, making sure that we could make the changes that we feel we're going to have to make to improve the cyclist behavior as part of version 26. So while there isn't a direct, while we've gotten a couple of new features out of that, there has been a lot of efforts gone into that isn't immediately apparent with those behavior sets, but will hopefully set us in a good position for version 26. Another couple of changes we've made is that we've improved the look-ahead behavior. So there were certain conditions where if you had multiple nodes between a vehicle and a turn, or multiple vehicles between a node and another vehicle, the vehicles would struggle to look far enough ahead to make the appropriate decisions based on that. So while we've been in there, we've been tidying up that code, making sure it's ready for any adjustments we need to make. We've also managed to resolve those issues. So you'll see better behavior as vehicles approach junctions and other vehicles in areas with a lot of nodes close together. We're also planning, as part building on that work for this version, to look at some improvements to the lane change behavior where you've got incidents, where you've got vehicles that are stopped not in queues of traffic. So if you get a vehicle that's stopped in the middle of a link for an incident, that kind of thing, improving the behavior of vehicles so that they're passing that more frequently than they currently are. Next slide, please, Malcolm. We've also spent a fair amount of time on the performance. So we've been looking at model opening times, especially for larger models, as well as the time for switching between tabs, and also the time it takes to edit specific features like lane points and things. So on larger, it's not going to show very well on this model, but on larger models, trying to move these things can slow down. So we've spent some time trying to improve that as well to make it easier for larger models, to make sure that the editing is as productive as it can be. While we've been investing in this code, in the improvements to the behavior and the lane change and acceleration code, we've also taken a new approach with bugs, partly because we're now moving to this annual release cycle for this version, but also as a renewed investment in making sure the product is as high a quality as it possibly can be in every release. So we are spending a lot more time fixing bugs, looking for bugs, making sure it's as robust as possible by the time it actually gets released to users at the end of the version. As part of that, we're building on more and more automated testing. So we have automated tools now that can test the user interface for us. That happens on a daily basis. We also have some, I think it's somewhere between 12 and 24 models that we run on a nightly basis to ensure that there are no changes to behavior, regardless of what the developer's been doing, as well as some statistical analysis going on there to make sure that things are as bug-free as they can be. A lot of that is really about refactoring the code and making it easier to read, making it easier to modify, and setting us in a good position for the upcoming versions to make the kind of changes, the big changes that we want to do. Now we have a small number of clients that have trouble getting the Paramics Discovery to work with the Intel GPU. This is on our list of known hardware issues at the moment, and it's not something that it's something that we want to try and address. We work well on ATI and NVIDIA chipsets, but for some reason the Intel chipsets causes problems. So we're investing more time in this version and trying to resolve that issue. So in the hope that when version 25 comes out, hopefully that issue will be resolved, and this Intel hardware, which is quite common these days, will support that much better for version 25. So it's a continuing of investigation. Unfortunately, it's not, we're following all the rules so far as anyone can tell. It seems to be some sort of incompatibility with the Intel GPU, and hopefully we'll be able to work around it. Next slide, Mom, please. So yeah, we've introduced, as well as all the things I've shown you today, we've also introduced a number of other minor improvements. These are just a handful of them. So warnings for unassigned profiles and time period overlaps. So when you open up a model, if you've got a profile which is not assigned to anything, it'll warn you about that, as well as if you have like a set of signals with overlapping timeframes, it will highlight that issue to you as well. We're trying to make our duplication buttons more consistent. So where you have something in a list, that you can more easily copy it and then or duplicate it and make adjustments to it. The simulation tab, we've improved the way that it displays the demand sets and scripts. So they'll be displayed with their names now instead of just indices. And we've had some feedback that different users like to name their models in different ways, more essentially. Some people use the folder to name the model. Some people use the .paramics file to name the model. And the way that we were displaying the name of the model in the title bar was missing that information in some cases. So we've changed it now that hopefully it will show as much of the path as possible, or at least show the end part, which is usually where the name is. We're also looking at importing pedestrian crossings and exporting them. Added more network review features, as I mentioned earlier, for things that have time period information like restrictions. We've had a number of people tell us about issues with the matrix estimation user experience, so we hope to make some improvements there, make it more intuitive to use. And although it's not available to see yet, we have just put in the ability to copy demands out of Paramics Discovery into Excel and vice versa. So we're still prototyping that one at the moment, but hopefully it'll make it into 25 by the time we come to the release. And there will be various other things coming in version 25, including a huge number of bug fixes, as well as other minor UI things that we just didn't quite have time to cover all of them today. So going ahead then to version 26 and 27, I've touched on a couple of times that cyclists is going to be a big thing for us in these versions. We've spent the time that we needed to spend improving the behaviors in so much as making it possible for us to modify them in ways that will be necessary to better model cyclists as part of that. We're also going to be looking at the speed distributions, which is fixed in Paramics Discovery at the moment, with what has been a very successful distribution over the years, but we want to open that up and make it possible for people to make adjustments. And then pedestrian visualization, which is something we've been asked for a number of times as well. So Paramics is very much, as I think Malcolm touched on earlier, a road network simulation of the traffic network. And we're not intending to become a pedestrian simulation tool. It will be about pedestrian visualization so that you can have the ability to see that and you'll have the ability to visualize. Yeah. And we'll have the ability to visualize the pedestrians and hopefully their interactions with the pedestrian crossings, but we won't actually be simulating pedestrians and generating statistics on them specifically. We also hope to introduce more access to open source mapping. We touched on aerial photography earlier and the ability to import large collections of large tiles to use as part of your modeling, but we're hoping to be able to access open source data mapping, open source mapping tools, and bring those into Paramics Discovery to import those aerial tiles directly rather than having to source them elsewhere. We have looked a number of times into trying to use Google and other tools, but it's that you could fill an entire session on that alone. And we also hope to revisit the Simulation Manager and make some improvements to that tool. I know some people do find it very useful, so we're hoping to just tweak that a little bit and hopefully make it even more so. And finally, there, just again, the renewed focus on fixing of bugs, increasing the automated testing, improving the performance in each version. So while we're not specifically targeting that in any version, it is going to be a key cornerstone of each version, is making sure that the bugs, we're putting it out with 0 bugs, putting it out with and using the automated testing, the refactoring to get to that, to aim for that goal, and hopefully improving the performance as a matter of course in each version. The next, Malcolm, is that the end?
Yeah, I think thanks for that, Dave. So I'm conscious of time. We've just got 8 minutes left in this session. So if you do have any questions, please fire them in and we'll do our best to answer them before the end of the session. And while hopefully some of those are coming in, I'll just go through some of the services that we're offering. Just this won't be new, brand new to many of you, but it will. It's just to kind of reiterate what we have to help support you to keep using Paramics Discovery as effectively as possible. So we've got a model development course. This is great for beginners. If you've got new people coming into your organizations, then this 2-day course will really get them started and get them going quickly with Paramics Discovery. We've also got a model audit course, which is 1 day, and it's ideal if you're reviewing, auditing models, even if you're reviewing internally within your organization. I also want to highlight that we have launched this in 2021, which we've called advanced training. So it's not a specific training course that you would go through like the other two, but it is more a tailored or bespoke training day or days with some of our expert users. I think one of the best assets that we have to be able to offer you is experience. And so the idea of advanced training would be identifying what's most useful for you and working through that with you, maybe using a specific model that you're working on as a case study and example. So if you're interested in more advanced training than the other courses, please get in touch, and there is something that we can offer there. I also want to reiterate this: the model conversion service. Now, what the survey revealed to us was that there's still a lot of S-Paramics use out there, and that there's maybe 15% of users have used this model conversion service to convert S-Paramics models to Paramics Discovery. It's a really good service because not only do you get the conversion of the model, but we also will write a short report on what you then need to do with that Paramics Discovery model to make sure it's up to scratch. With Paramics, we're still supporting it. It's great that we can. It works on Windows 10. I was saying to Dave yesterday that I just saw an announcement for Windows 11, which is coming out. And we are not going to be in a position where we can continue to support Paramics indefinitely, and there's already limitations to what we can actually do to solve problems that might come up in Paramics. So I just want to encourage you and reiterate again the need to move on to Paramics Discovery, and we do have this service to help you do that. We've also got loads of video tutorials, as hopefully many of you will be aware, and we're going to have a whole series of these coming in the autumn for version 25. So there's going to be lots happening in the autumn as we release video tutorials of a lot of the things that Dave has demonstrated today. Script templates, if you're not aware of these, we've got several of these on our support center to help you start using scripts in your models. And we've also got knowledge base articles on the support center. And the reason for highlighting this is because, again, another bit of the feedback from the Paramics survey was that there was a bit of a gap here for people, that there wasn't enough. Now, we've been investing in this and working on this, and we've actually got 62 new articles, some of them quite simple and basic, but others more complex, which are in draft and which we're going to be putting up on our support center in the next couple of months. So that's an area we're investing in. So keep a lookout for the knowledge base articles as other ways of learning and using Paramics effectively. And finally, just some other services that we offer. We do model auditing, and also we have done we've offered a few different things to people to help them in different ways, and we just want to kind of extend that and make you as a user community more aware of it, that if it comes to things like writing Python scripts, whether that's in Paramics Discovery or external, that's a service that we can offer or help with. And also things like data management, so whether that's processing, preparing model inputs, extracting or presenting model outputs. We've got a software team who do a lot of coding, and they're very good at working with large amounts of data. And so if some of those kind of tasks around your modeling are not your specialty, or you don't have people in your teams who can do them, then just to make you aware that we have some skills that we could be able to offer to you. Okay, I'm going to jump out of the presentation there, I think. And if I just close that, and now how do we get to, there we go. We're both back on the screen.
Excellent.
Okay, so just a few minutes left.
I thought it might be useful just to touch on, since you've just mentioned the new knowledge base articles, that there is the option now in the help menu of Paramics to search that knowledge base. So you can obviously just open the knowledge base website, the support site directly, but also you can search directly from there, which will hopefully make it easier for people to make use of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for the comments, John. I see you've been chipping away throughout the session, so I appreciate all your feedback there and encouragement. We're really in the last couple of minutes, so if there's any final questions or comments, just fire them in now, and hopefully we'll be able to answer. But Dave, thank you very much for presenting that today. There's obviously like a lot in there that you kind of went through very quickly, but it certainly came across to me, and hopefully did to everyone else as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I've been very pleased with the amount of feedback we've had in this last year. Has been great. The survey has been really useful for us. I think it's helped us really target some specific problems that people were having. At the same time, we obviously have the arc of getting towards cyclists, getting towards pedestrians, and the steps we had to take to get there. In the recent past, we've gone through things like undo and updating the graphics and things like that. We have this overall arc, but that feedback is great just for finding out where are the problems that people are having, what's aside from this arc that we're on, what else can we do to make people's life that, or just to improve the quality of life when you're using this product to do your everyday work. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks everyone. I see a few thank yous coming in, which we really appreciate, and it's good to hear that what we've offered in these last 4 weeks is resonating with some of you. So that's the end of our workshop series. You can catch up on all of them. They'll all be posted online. We'll also put up this presentation certainly, and maybe aspects of some of the other ones as well, so you can see those. If you're having a summer holiday and if you're able to get away anywhere, we hope you have a great time. I know the options are limited at the moment. We're going to be kind of around, of course, during the summer doing our usual development and support, but we'll be back in more visible in the autumn when we do our video tutorials for version 25, and then we move towards releasing version 25 in November. But of course, if there's anything you want to get in touch with us about, please don't hesitate to do so. And so it just leaves me to say thank you to Dave once again, and thank you all for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.